I'm in the studio today with Hamish McLean, editor of the Canmore Leader, and Larissa Barlow, editor of the Banff Crag Canyon. Thanks again for joining me.
Thanks, Camara.
Thanks, Camara.
We have a really interesting story coming out of Lake Minnewanka. Do you want to share that with us, Larissa?
Yeah, an underwater archaeology team out of Ottawa was in town for 2 weeks, diving to the bottom of the lake to try to find this campsite that was used by the first people to ever come to this area over 10,000 years ago. And they know it's there. This was sort of the feeling around stage to sort of take these sediment samples to kind of figure out where the camp is, if it's moved at all from just being underwater for so long, and just sort of get those parameters set so that they can come back maybe in a year's time and really do like a big investigation of that area and see if there's anything that they can dig up. And
how did they know to even check the spot out?
I think it's a spot that's been good for camping for many, many, many years, and it was on the surface of the lake until about 100 years ago when a couple of dams went in and sort of flooded the area, thus somewhat preserving it. But it had been exposed for those 100 years. So I mean, they do know that it's one of those places that has this deep-rooted history. They just need to kind of figure out how they're going to go about, unearthing that.
And did they find anything on this visit?
This was just sort of, figuring out like how deep it was. They were taking like sediment samples, and it was pretty much just taking these big tubes and pounding them into the ground and then pulling it up and then, kind of comparing it to soil samples and just seeing, I think one of the archaeologists said, if it's red dirt, then we know it's over 9,000 years we've reached. So that's pretty cool. So they were sort of figuring out where it is, and now that they've kind of got that idea, they'll do a bit more analysis, figure out if it's worth it to commit a large-scale operation to this, and then maybe we'll learn a little bit more about the first peoples that came to the area.
Definitely, and that underwater team with Parks Canada is really uncovering some really cool projects throughout Canada. So it's nice that they got to stop by Lake Minnewanka as well.
Do some
searching.
They'd been in this area before. I think in 1994 they were kind of mapping that town that's under Lake Minnewanka as well. That's really popular with scuba divers. And so they said that if they had time, they were going to go back and see if they could, figure out if also anything had shifted there, just in issues of safety for all those scuba divers. So, I think they want to come back and do a bit of a deeper mapping of that as well. And yeah, they were the ones that had been in the Arctic that were kind of unearthing all of these ships that were underwater. So they have some pretty cool jobs,
And tell me a little bit more about this town under Lake Minnewanka.
Yeah, there used to be like a town in that area.
Like a modern town? Well, in the last 100 years?
I think prior to that, or it's older than that, isn't it?
I always just assumed it was like Bankhead kind of era, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not really.
I'm not a scuba diver
on it. I
understand that's why people go scuba diving in Lake Minnewanka. Yeah,
it's because there's this
ruins,
underwater ghost town.
Cool.
There.
Interesting. Hamish, you just got back from vacation. That's why you weren't with us last week.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do the under the town tour of Seattle?
I did a different town tour of Seattle.
Okay.
I was with a guy who lived there for like 12 years, and we were visiting a guy who still lives there. And so we saw some cool things, but it was more like eating pig's feet at his favorite restaurant and going for a nice walk before going to a favorite coffee shop and stuff like that.
But you know that you can do a tour under Seattle, because Seattle was built on top of itself.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Well, I know you just got back, but what can you tell us about what's been going on in Canmore in the last week?
I talked to Corey. She was the one who was covering the town in my absence, and I think one of the things that was interesting for her, for sure, was the Save the Bunnies campaign. Is Canmore Save Canmore Bunnies is still going strong. You know what I mean? We're looking for a decision on like how to solve the rabbit problem in Canmore, and it's going to come in November, most likely. It'll be presented, like options will be presented to council in November. And I think that we're still at... We're at a time where I believe a lot of Canmore residents are really just looking for closure on this, and yet there are some people who are really still trying to force the issue and saying the best way to go, really the only good way to go, is with a non-lethal option. And so, it's sort of like maybe it's just media or raising public awareness kind of a campaign, but that's still going on, and we will start to see some debate with the people who do make the decisions coming up real soon. So I think that it's one of those things where, during the municipal election, during public debates or public forums, they said, we're not talking about the rabbits here because we're going to be here all day. You know what I mean? Well, that day has come, and whether or not people want to talk about the rabbits, it's going to happen.
We always talk about killing off the rabbits. Give us some examples of what people have been talking about for non-lethal.
Well, it's like spay and neuter, you know what I mean? And wildlife sanctuaries or animal sanctuaries of some kind. And that's the thing, right? Is even today, you know what I mean? Still getting letters. I got a letter today saying like, hey, please check out what we visit Canmore. We like Canmore. We're from Victoria. This is what we did at the University of Victoria. 10 years later, the problem's under control. You know what I mean? Like, it's sort of like, let's not go for a quick fix, round up all the bunnies and Pied Piper them into the river. You know what I mean? But
is that one of the options on the table?
I think that is an option because it's probably, around $50,000 that you can hire a Pied Piper. But that's what they're going to spend, is what they're saying right now. And I don't know, maybe it is more about looking for a long-term approach as opposed to a short-term quick fix solution.
Interesting. And then back to Banff, another topic that we've brought up before that sometimes we get a little bit tired of talking about is the dog park in Banff.
I never get tired of talking about it.
Well, I clearly talk about it in more avenues than this.
Do you talk about it in your sleep? Do you dream about
often.
dog parks in Banff?
Yeah, often. I spend a lot of time in Canmore, so I hear a lot about that debate. As we all know, Canmore has a thriving off-leash dog park.
Or two.
Or two.
Yeah, there's a couple.
Yeah. And Banff has 0.
Yes.
I think there's 3 in Canmore, right?
Is there?
I think so,
know.
yeah.
There's
Sorry.
Nice living in Canmore.
I'm supposed to just be a hype man today.
Oh, la-di-da, your 3 dog parks.
Versus Banff 0, and I think it's something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, well, council has been working on this, and the town staff have been working on it for a very long time, and they've come up with 2 options for it. One's kind of in the industrial compound, and the other one is in the Whiskey Creek, Margaret Crescent area. So what the next steps, now that they have picked 2 potential sites, I think there's zoning issues with these 2 sites that they need to sort of sort out, but that'll come. But they're going to put out a survey in early November, asking everyone in town, which one do you like? Do you want them both? What are some of the things you're looking for? And then that survey will be analyzed and compiled with a report that council will get in time before I think they're going to be doing the capital budget. So that leaves it open for them to put some money aside in these budget discussions for next year or 5 years from now. But at least it'll be on the table at some point to sort of figure out, what's needed, what people want to see, and, how do you move forward from this and maybe finally end the issue that Camara is tired of talking about.
Are the spaces big enough to have an off-leash dog park for an entire town?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why they were saying, we don't necessarily only need the one. Maybe we can get both to work. It's going to be tough. A lot of people in town have dogs, and I think a lot of visitors bring their dogs, and it would be really nice to have one. Will it be very busy? Perhaps. I don't doubt it, yeah.
The other concern is that dogs off-leash bother animals around the town, bighorn sheep and elk and such. Right. Is that still a concern?
I think it is, but I think part of the reason to get it in front of council by budget time is to maybe look at fencing and just sort of wrapping up that whole area, just so you kind of go in and then make sure your dog doesn't run out of the fencing area, and then that would be the off-leash dog park. Because there is huge concerns about wildlife, but I think from past reports, Parks Canada is okay with the town doing this as long as it's within town land.
All right.
I don't think it's a slippery slope either. I think that, you know what I mean? It's not like having your dog off leash in the dog park is going to make you more likely to have your dog off leash elsewhere in the park. You know what I mean? And I think that that's like, you still see that in Canmore, is that there are a lot of people who don't keep their dogs on a leash when they're not when they're outside of the off leash areas. You know what I mean? And that's what you got to give people that option to say, like, look, yes, I know that your dog loves running free. That's what dogs love to do. Here's a place you can do it in town.
For sure. Maybe there should be a bit more awareness, though, for dogs on leash when you're out in the backcountry, especially at this time of year, because all the animals are getting ready for winter, and even just running off a couple times before the first frost really depletes their resources. And we got to care about our dogs, but we also need to care about the animals that are actually native to this area as well.
Right. And that's the thing, is like, it looks like both towns are, you know what I mean, are getting better and better at managing wildlife attractants. So what's the next big deal? It might be off-leash dogs. Maybe it should be.
Yeah. Great. Well, there was lots of great stuff, and Halloween is coming up, so I'm sure we'll have lots of interesting events going on, and we'll share those throughout the weekend for listeners. But what are you guys doing for Halloween? I think I know Hamish's answer. Nothing.
Yeah, well, because, I don't know, I was going to make a suggestion to someone, but she said she's just working, so I guess I'll just work too, you know what I mean? I was thinking maybe a scary movie or something, because I'm not that kind of a guy.
Not a Halloween kind of guy.
Halloween is for kids and...
Kids at heart.
Kids at heart, yes.
Ghoulish sounds. Larissa, what are you up to?
Well, I have to put out a paper the next day, so I don't think I'm going to be up too late.
Well, usually people celebrate Halloween on the weekend.
Right. So the Legion's having a big party, so I was there for that last year. And they do a really good job making it look scary in there, so I think I'll go and be frightened a little bit.
What did you dress up as last year?
I didn't dress up, really. I didn't know it was happening. I just sort of showed up for a different occasion. It was sort of a going away party for someone, and then suddenly Halloween was upon me. So maybe I'll be prepared this year and look for a costume, though I have yet to do that.
Right. Yeah. Well, have a wicked weekend, and we'll talk to you both next week.
Cool.
Thanks, Camara.